Dámy a pánové, své znalosti a dovednosti nám předvedou na straně afirmativní tým z gymnázia v Praze, z Nad Alejí, Dream Team. Za stranu negativní uvidíme a uslyšíme tým z Open Gate Boarding School Babice Nunc Sequimur. Debata bude rozhodovat panel rozhodčí ve složení předseda panelu pan Hrabánek, dalšími členy panelu budou trenérka národního týmu Irena Kotíková, Anna Koutnicová, Zimmerová, Michal Pečeňa, Grace Blašková, Jaron Kennedy. Panel je 7členný tak, aby pokud náhodou některý z týmů nebude zcela dominantní a přesvědčivý, tak aby se dobrali verdiktů. Členové panelu jsou zkušení debatéři i koučové týmu. Dámy a pánové, představím vám nejenom týmy, ale jednotlivé debatéry. Prosím, přivítejte za tým Dream Team v pořadí vystupujících Martin Babička, Finálová, v pořadí vystupující za tým Nunc Sequimur. První mluvčím bude Šimon Podhajský, Václav Soukup, Marek Svoboda. Dámy a pánové, všem nám přeji příjemný zážitek.
We'll show that on 3 arguments. We define GMOs as organisms containing engineered genes that make the herbicide or insect tolerant, able to adapt in harsh environment, or containing more micronutrients. We define support as that we want United Nations to officially recognize the benefits of genetically modified organisms and encourage their use and development, as well incorporate in its own programs such as the World Food Program, and giving subsidies to GMO farmers and promote their use in other non-governmental organizations such as World Bank. We believe that prior to the extensive use of GMOs is the perception that anything GM is evil. The United Nations recognition will break this perception. Thereby, they will highlight the benefits of GMOs in the international scene, which by itself will foster use and development in our markets. Our highest value is benefits for mankind. Let me now move to the first argument, which is about decreasing hunger and improving health. Even today, people in developing countries often starve to death or suffer from banal diseases caused by malnutrition. We believe that introduction of GMOs can help to solve both of these problems. Let me move to the first point, that is hunger. People in developing countries starve due to misplaced distribution of food and high prices. GMO will address these phases of the issues by introducing the supply locally. There is also possible to increase productivity and to grow in harsh conditions. They also decrease cost of production by requiring less input. For instance, drought-tolerant wheat that can yield 20% more. We do not merely aim to increase amount of food in the world. We mainly want it to be placed in places where it's needed and which are thus most affected by such problems. By ensuring that growing food is affordable and possible in these areas, we want to ensure that the food supply will reach the people who haven't had access to it yet. And now about the second point, that's health. People in developing countries often suffer from dietary micronutrient deficiencies that may cause several illnesses or even death. According to World Health Organization, dietary vitamin A deficiency, or VAD, causes 250,000 to 500,000 children go blind every year, and more than half of them dies within a year. This problem concerns mainly rice-based societies, but there is a solution, which is golden rice. Golden rice is genetically engineered to produce and accumulate beta-carotene in the grains, thus solving VAD, hence improving the health of the people in the affected areas. Therefore, it certainly brings benefits for mankind by solving both of the health and hunger issues. To the second argument about reducing the environmental footprint. Today's agriculture is harmful and introduction GMOs can help to solve them. The problems GMOs will address are, firstly, deforestation. Deforestation will be diminished because of higher yields. For example, in the period from 1996 to 2007, GMOs have precluded the need for additional area of 43 million hectares. Moreover, it lowers the requirements for pesticides. GMOs have managed to do 17.2% less damage, judging by the environmental impact quotient, and the trend is rising. It also contributes to reduction of greenhouse gases. We can thereby see that GMOs contribute to more eco-friendly agriculture, which will obviate the threat of climate changes, which, if left untouched, can cause thousands of deaths. Additionally, it saves water. It's important to note that currently 70% of fresh water is used by agriculture, and which is not sustainable, and drought-tolerant plants will diminish this issue. Given that world's population is the rise and water supply are limited, it's of essence to sustain development. Bright prospects for the future of the mankind are thus achieved by use and development of GMOs. And now to the last argument, the third argument about sustainable economic benefits. People in developing countries tend to be poor. We need the GMOs that GMOs will bring economic profit, as it was calculated that global net economic benefit to biotech crop farmers in 2007 was 10 billion, 60% of which was to developing countries. Biotech rice, for example, has therefore potential to benefit over 1 billion people in Asia alone, some of which have income lower than $1 per day. These are some of the poorest people in the world, and they can benefit greatly by the implementation of the genetically modified organisms. So the genetically modified organisms bring benefit to both developed and developing world. To summarize what I've been talking about is that we should indeed pursue the extended use and development of GMOs for the bringing undisputable benefit for mankind. Firstly, GMOs help to solve the hunger and malnutrition problems by allowing the food to be grown where it's needed and not expensively imported from abroad. Secondly, GMOs will lessen the environmental impact of agriculture, which is constantly desirable given the unsustainable trend and accelerating climate changes. And last but not least, GMOs will bring sustainable economic benefits to the developed world, but also what is most important, to developing world. Agricultural revolution has fed Europe and America. Now it's time to feed the rest of the world. Let's start agricultural revolution 2.0. Thank you for your attention. No, I don't think so. I think that we can solve this problem and that there is no big danger.
Well, it's not a problem actually. Are there going to be implemented also termination genes in these genetically modified organisms or not?
It depends on the organisms. Like,
so,
it depends
to which ones would you implement these termination genes?
It depends on the conditions where the organism will be planted.
For example?
Yeah.
So when would you and when you would not? Please answer the question.
If it's worth, it is important to have the terminated genes there will be, but not necessarily.
Okay. Now, are you aware that actually there are also some health risks that are caused by genetically modified organisms?
There have been some health risks in past, but we can help it. We can develop the organisms and we can test it. And when we are sure that there is no harm, we will grow it. And
are we yet sure that there is no harm?
Yes, we can get sure that there will not be.
Are we sure now? Not we can get sure. Are we sure now that there are no health risks caused by genetically modified organisms?
Each organism needs to be tested, and then we will know if there is harm or if there is not. Of course, we cannot use organisms that won't be tested.
Of course. Thank you. You were fine. You were talking about higher yields of these genetically modified organisms. Can you give me one or maybe more example of genetically modified organisms with higher yields? Specific example.
I don't have specific word. Yes, in India, the cotton has increased yields by 50%, according to economists.
Okay. And okay, you were talking about the golden rice as well. Do you know, or do you have an estimate how much golden rice one person needs to eat, in fact, for his health to be improved?
I don't know the number.
Okay, if this is your question, thank you for your answer.
And bad days in life. There are good days when you get to the debate finals to debate the most awesome team I've ever seen in front of the best audience I've ever had. Thank you all guys for coming here. Now, what I'm going to do in my speech is that I'm going to point out the bad days when your job, your income, and your health are all washed down the drain because of implementation of genetically modified organisms. And since the argumentation of Team Affirmative has been based on multiple different assumptions, I'm going to question these assumptions instead of the argument, but I'm going to say where these assumptions come from. So right now I'm going to point out the very first assumption, which Team Affirmative makes, and that is that genetically modified organisms solve hunger. That is the basis of their first argument as well as their third one. Now, firstly, their assumption in here is that when we increase yields and when we increase the overall amount of food, well, the world hunger is certainly going to go down in the long term, and it's going to deliver benefits for mankind, as we've heard. Unfortunately, history does not prove that to be right. We've already had increases in yields in the Green Revolution of the 1980s. All that it did was that it sustained already unsustainable overpopulation, because when people got their cheap food, they started to populate the earth more and more, and now, today, we have more hungry people as a proportion of global population than we had in the 1950s. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we see that this does not actually decrease world hunger, quite on the contrary. We have actually two studies from one of the world's most renowned universities, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology from 2008 and the Brown University from 2009, which points out that solving hunger and diseases without any further improvements in anything depresses income for almost 2 generations in the developing countries, does not increase it. Because since this actually sustains an unsustainable overpopulation, there are more people for fewer factors of production, for fewer resources. Even though food enables them to go and eat, it does not enable them to prosper. Now, secondly, we would like to point out that even though in the short term, higher yields may give us more food, in the long term, they are fundamentally harmful. Because The higher yields are only made possible due to better insecticide production and herbicide production, as Martin pointed out in his definition. And therefore, you need to use more insecticide and more herbicide. However, that has the effect that the resistance against herbicide and the resistance against and the resistance inherent in insects spread, which creates super insects, super pests, and super weeds, which can harm even normal productions, and even the GM productions. We have the 2009 organic chemistry study by Charles Benbrook, who points out that in one of the countries which actually use GMOs extensively for quite some time, the United States of America, super pests and super weeds resistant to herbicides and pesticides have actually decreased cotton production and forced some of the farmers to displace from their fields and to resort to manual labor, thus decreasing the productivity manifold. Therefore, the long-term impacts of genetically modified organisms are unpredictable. And we can assume that since the resistance spreads as a rule of nature, as a rule of evolution, we can be facing a much more harsh food crisis later on. So this was the refutation to solvent hunger. Now I'm going to refute the solvent health and the health risks. Because while team proposition assumes that by solvent hunger we are going to solve health risks, which I've already pointed out not true, there are more health risks to be taken into account. Genetically modified organisms are much like the DDT in the 1950s, ladies and gentlemen. We thought that it is our savior, but after 20 years of usage, we found out that it has permanent effects which result in birth defects, in harming the populations, especially of the developing world. We already know that genetically modified foods cause allergies, antibiotics resistance, residual matter left in body, and we shouldn't introduce that without knowing what that means, and we will not know that for another 50 years. According to May 17, 2009, American Academy of Environmental Medicine, moratorium, we simply should not do that because the risks are too great. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the increasing income point and the herbicides. What team proposition assumes is that we are going to help the farmers. However, we are not going to help the poorest. Because since costs increase, as Martin admitted in the cross-questioning, people who now in the developing world manually work on the fields, hoe the pests away, and now they are going to lose their jobs because they will be no longer necessary. The herbicides are going to take care of their jobs. The machines are going to do that. Therefore, even though our overall output may increase for a while, this is going to increase significant social costs worldwide. We've already seen that already in the Green Revolution, which started one of the most massive displacements into urban areas and increased poverty on an unprecedented scale. And we see that that is by no means definitely good for mankind, as team proposition assumes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the time to wash our health, our income, and our ability to prosper down the drain. Please vote for opposition. Thank you.
Talked about how awesome we are, we also should have listened to our speech previously, but to that later. Firstly, you talked about overpopulation, so your plan is essentially to let the people in Africa die, is that correct?
No, our plan is not to let the people in Africa die. Our plan is to keep realistic expectations of our natural resources. And because we cannot simply expect for the people in Africa to grow at a rate of 10% a year and still survive. I know that it sounds heartless, but ladies and gentlemen, our world has finite resources. We cannot simply abuse them because we increase productivity for a while, because that is not sustainable.
So you agree that there's a lack of food in the status quo, and you're willing to contribute to that situation?
Actually, there's not a lack of food.
Well, in Africa,
there's a lack of income to buy that food. However, you are not
solving
solving
that
lack of
Okay,
because
that's, may I interrupt you, sir?
Yeah.
I have a different question right now. So you also talked about how people will essentially lose jobs because they will be no longer needed, they will be made redundant because of the pesticide. Is that correct?
Yes, well, not only because of the pesticides, but yes, GMOs support technicalization, which rids people of their manual jobs, which they need to get at least that $1.
Okay, I hope we'll elaborate on that in our speech. I have a different question right now. How long was the DDT used? For how long time?
For how long? Well, since the Second World War, when we sprayed children, women, and men with DDT, so that we could get rid them of diseases.
And
I believe the 1970s, when there were finally long-term studies.
Then you talked about more pesticide, which is factually not true, and we even pointed out that in our speech there's going to be a less pesticide, but to that later. Can contribute to super weeds. How is that working exactly?
Well, sir, since the resistance to weed and pesticides spreads from the plants to the weeds.
How exactly?
Well, simply said, because the antimatter. Well, it's not the antimatter, but you know what I mean. In the plants. Well,
what exactly are you talking?
Okay, you have genetic modification in the plants, which either prevent them from dying from spraying with so much herbicide that it would kill any other plant, which is, for instance, the Roundup variety or Monsanto, which means that you use more herbicide and pesticide.
Explain the mechanism, please.
Or you have resistance in, for instance, BT cotton, which prevents the insects momentarily from harming. Now, in the Indian state of Gujarat, this already stops working, and when that's because the pests become immune not only to that, but also to normal ways of preventing their abuse. And that means that you need to use more herbicide and more pesticide ever to get rid of these super resistant pests, which means that in the long term, what you get with genetically modified foods is not prosperity, but harm and hunger.
Thank you for your speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, what a beautiful day. What a pity that opposition is actually trying to make all days worse for the people who are dying out there now as we speak. In my speech, I'm going to deal with all three arguments in this debate and show you that opposition actually fails to address them at all. Firstly, let me move to the point of health and hunger. We were just told that by increasing the amount of food in the areas where we and the people there actually need it, we are actually just letting them multiply like mice, and that they are actually going to, destroy all the world because there's just going to be too much of them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, how is that not selfish? What we have to realize is that people today are dying because of lack of food, let alone that they would have many kids and raise them, because these kids just die today. What we are actually trying to solve here is people dying. We need to feed them. When they get enough food just to survive, that's enough. That's the achievement. Well, they still probably won't have enough food to, multiply and have thousands of children. However, we want them to survive. The immediate problem is people dying in these areas of the world. We do not, as the first speaker said, aim to decrease the overall amount of food in the world. We just want to increase the amount in the places where it is needed. Because the problem is, yes, poverty. Importing the food to Africa, where it could be grown, where GMOs be implemented, it's just too expensive. Importing it's not possible today. But if we let people in poor countries, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, grow their own food, which GMO can actually make possible, we actually solve this problem of hunger. We, ladies and gentlemen, mustn't be selfish as opposition is. We mustn't let these people die today. We can still see that it's not true that this rapid development won't be sustainable, because GMO just opened a new kind of natural resources, which opposition was talking about. There will be completely new sector. And since these people will be able to plant GMOs, they will inevitably, as we have shown in the third argument, have some profit, even economic one, and thus we can get these people of the vicious circle of poverty that now exists in these developing countries. And secondly, to the subpoint of health. Yes, it's sure that we need to test everything. And that's what we are doing today, actually. In the European Union, for example, there are very strict tests on any kind of GMO. And if some of them is shown to be harmful for people, well, then it is never implemented. So we can see that there are strict controls in the world today, and that we do not have to fear allergies anymore, as we had to fear in the 90s, but these times are long gone. And secondly, we can see that GMOs today actually help to solve diseases, be it vitamin A deficiency, as the first speaker said. Even 20% of recommended daily dose can solve the problem of children going blind and dying. Moreover, we can again remove allergens from the plants, so we can solve even normal cases of allergies. And we can also put some vaccines into the wheat, for example, so that people in Africa can be vaccinated through their food. And we can see that these benefits are immense. Secondly, there was the point of environmental footprint, which was not refuted by opposition at all. But ladies and gentlemen, we have to see that this argument is crucial. We have to see that today, one of the greatest problems can be global climate change. And we can see that by implementing GMOs, we can preclude the need for cutting more rainforests, which can help us to tackle global warming. Also, we can see that we will be saving water through implementing GMOs, just because they just need less water to grow the same amount. And since today 70% of fresh water is consumed by agriculture, we can see that this is not sustainable, since people often don't have enough clear water to drink. So we believe that this is also crucial for mankind. And also we have to realize that we are also reducing greenhouse gases emissions, for example, which can be a problem in the future. For example, in 2007, the amounts of CO2 saved by implementing GMOs was equal to removing 6.3 million cars off the roads. And we can see that this still contributes to better environment and therefore benefits mankind. But now let me thirdly move to the point of economic benefits. We were told that we still want to help the poorest by implementing genetically modified organisms, because you don't have to tear up the weeds from the field manually. So those poorest people will lose their job. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is not true. Let's look at how the agriculture in poor developing countries works. You, as a poor resource farmer, grow something for your consumption, for yourself, your family, and maybe like 5 other people. You are not selling it to someone else. So you are basically creating for your own consumption. So we can see that you do not lose your job. You can only improve your job, improve your benefits, and then you can become a larger resource farmer, as we have today in Europe, as we have in America. These people can get out of their poverty, and the whole system of developing countries can get from their poverty. So we can see that there still is economic profit. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I managed to show you that on the points of hunger and health, environmental footprint, and economic benefit, GMOs is a thing we need to implement. After all, it really is a bad day for opposition, because they cannot win this way.
Glad to see your voice has improved.
Yeah, well, slightly.
Well, Jana, can I ask firstly, when you give people food that they would not otherwise be able to afford, what do they do?
Well, they don't die in the first place.
Well, okay, and how do you explain that in India, this has not solved the problem of hunger at all? That this is only, that the Green Revolution, which increased the amount of food that was available locally, only increased the amount of food, the amount of people who are hungry right now.
Well, speaking of India, most of the GM crops grown in India are cotton. It's like 90%, and you will don't.
Well, we are talking about Green Revolution here, but that's something entirely different. But don't you think that that's much better than encouraging something unsustainable?
It's not unsustainable, it's getting them out of vicious circle of poverty. Which is...
How does that get them from vicious circle of poverty? You feed them.
No, you give them resources to grow something. They can, eat. But they also get economic profit. They can...
You said that they don't sell it.
Today, because, well, they hardly have enough to feed themselves. But with genetically modified organisms, they can feed themselves, plus sell it to someone else. Also.
Yeah, Piana, but can you please explain how come that the very same process already did not work one time? Why should that work now?
Well, it was failed probably. We have to organize it in a better way.
Right. So the Green Revolution, which increased the amount of food in India and elsewhere throughout, did not work because it was unequally distributed. Is that what you are saying?
It seems so.
Okay. Well, don't you think that rather than encouraging overpopulation, which has to result in people dying, it is better to prevent these tragic deaths from being inherently brought on the people by them
we
bearing
are
the
trying
babies?
to prevent these deaths.
Is there infinite amount of food in the world?
Surely there's no.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no of it.
Well, okay. So one last line of questioning. Are there people starving in Kenya?
Yeah.
Is there enough food in Kenya?
Well, I don't think so.
There's more dietary required food for more than enough people of Kenya. Then there is people of Kenya. How do you explain?
Well, probably these are not, people who starve in Kenya are not those who can plant those crops.
Well,
if they can plant them, they will get money. They will,
But how can the millions of people in Africa plant on the limited amount of fields that there are in Africa?
Well, some of them will plant, some of them will do something different. However, by introducing GMOs, we will increase the amount of arable land. Therefore, more people can actually profit from it.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, in 1950s the world was surprised by the new invention, by the DDT, which was the help for everything. It was the solution for all the problems of the mankind of that time. And in 2010 we have this new invention, the invention of genetically modified foods, which should be the solution for all the problems for now. What was the problem of DDT? Was that it was affecting human health, and it was really bad for their situation. The same it is with the GMOs, and I'm going to show you why on the argumentation of the affirmative side. What the affirmative side did they ignore our argument and our proofs of the super weeds, super pests, and so on. They just realized that these things are just for our other side, and these are really the harms which can result from the using of the GMOs. So I'm going to let's look at the argument and show you why the GMOs are not beneficial for the mankind. So the first argument was about hunger. As we've proved, increasing the amount of food by using the genetically modified food doesn't give us a long-term benefit. As we've shown you, there is, according to the study of the MIT and Brown University, the increase of amount of food will just increase the amount of people which are starving, which are affected by the hunger of the world. So if we will increase the amount of food, we wouldn't have more people which will be fed by this food, and we wouldn't get the benefits for the mankind. The affirmative side didn't react on these studies. They didn't show any example of proof that it would solve these problems. But we have proved by these studies that it really works and that it isn't beneficial for mankind. As we've heard in the cross-questioning, the problem of the lack of the hunger is not the lack of food. For example, in Kenya there is enough food for all the citizens of the country, but there is problem of the incomes. There is not enough money for the people to buy it. And as the second affirmative speaker said, it's because of the unequal distribution of the land. So as you can on this you can see that neither the genetically modified organism will help to solve it. Now to the second argument, which was the reducing of the footprint. If it is so important, I'm going to show you how our argumentation has proved that this argument doesn't really stand and is not beneficial for mankind. We've shown you in our first speech that herbicides. That there is a bigger need for herbicides if we are using the genetically modified organisms. So if we will implement the genetically modified food, we will affect the whole ecosystem by the super weeds, by the risk of the super pests and so on. As we've proved you, there are studies which prove that there is a risk that there will be new pests which will be resistant against the herbicides and pesticides, and it will be definitely not beneficial for mankind. Okay. Now to the arguments about greenhouse gases and the water need for water and so on. It wasn't explained to us in the speeches of the affirmative side. They didn't explain how it works. That the genetically modified foods will need less water or will be less dangerous for the environment and by the greenhouse gases. So we just can't take this argument to this debate. And that so it isn't important for this debate. Now to the last argument, which is about the economic profit. As we this argument also stands on the premise that the genetically modified food give us bigger yields and are more productive and will solve the hunger. This argument is just based on the first argument, and it's only based on the claim of the affirmative side that the genetically modified foods are fighting the hunger of the world. But as we've shown you, the hunger is still the hunger will not be solved by the genetically modified foods. And furthermore, we've shown you that the people will be losing jobs because of the genetically modified food, because there is the genetically modified food supports the mechanization, and so the people will lose their jobs because they won't be needed anymore. As was in the cross questioning, I will mention it again. The problem of the hunger in Africa is the lack of is the unequal distribution of land. So for the example of Kenya, we can see that these problems that it wouldn't solve this problem anyhow, because it just depends on the distribution of lands and not on the using of the genetically or not modified foods. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There is bigger need for pesticides. Do you have any evidence? Yes. For example, the most common type of the GMOs are the Roundup type of family of GMOs, which are the organisms which are immune to the herbicides and pesticides. So it is possible to use the herbicides and pesticides even more than in the normal kind of organisms. You said there is a problem of income, right? Yes, there's problem.
And so if we let people grow GMOs food and make money, we will solve the problem.
No, because if they will make money from it, we will solve this problem. But the people will definitely not have a bigger income if using the genetically modified organisms as I showed you.
So what would you do with starving people?
Well, there is. We should definitely keep doing what we are doing now. The problem is that we are doing now what? Well, we are giving humanitarian aid. We are supporting Africa by money.
Do you think that helps?
Well, I think that definitely is more beneficial than the genetically modified.
Do you think that is enough? Will we do enough?
Well, I think every time it is possible to do more. But if we
Okay,
would implement the genetically modified.
And so, what does DDT have in common with GMO? How is it related with the debate?
Well, as we have shown you, the DDT was something which should solve all the problems. And after the long-term test, it showed that the DDT is actually harmful. The GMOs are very similar to that. We don't have any long-term tests of the.
How is it similar?
Well, because we don't have any long-term tests of the genetically modified food, because the genetically modified organism doesn't exist long enough.
So there is no scientific relation or something based on science.
No, that's just look at how it works with the DDT, and it can be very similar with the.
Okay, it can be similar. Okay, so thank you. That's all.
Ladies and gentlemen, there have been some ambiguous claims about which kind of day this day is. Well, I'm going to show you that this indeed is going to be a good day, and I will show you that because we are going to win. So, what I'm going to show you in my speech is firstly the issue of hunger and the never tackled point of malnutrition, which is essential for this debate because they have never even dared to tackle on this point. Secondly, I will show you the point of pesticides, and I have them been factually wrong, and they have not been listening to us at all, and notwithstanding the fact that they have not provided any evidence. I will also deal with the point of environmental impact, which was never mentioned, despite us saying that in our second speech and in our first speech, and showing the importance of this argument, and was never tackled by the side of opposition at all. And lastly, to the point of economic benefits, which kind of stems from the first one. So let me get started. Firstly, the point of hunger. Let me point out a severe inconsistency in their speeches by saying that firstly, the Shimon Podhaisky has pointed out that it is important to make structural changes, as opposed to Mr. Lasasoku, who has said that we are going to continue what we're doing now, that is giving food to Africa. Since the latest since there has been an inconsistency, I'm going to deal with the latest statement, that is of the second speaker. I'd like to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, what is the difference? What is the difference between us giving the people in Africa food, thus having, all this bad consequence they have pointed out, by saying that they're going to multiply and therefore there's going to be more hunger, different from the GMOs, where we not only give them food, we moreover give them jobs, ladies and gentlemen. So their plan, which remains to give them food, which essentially is pretty much doing just the bad ramifications of what they have been claiming, as opposed to GMOs, which actually gives the people rights to actually the possibility to grow more food by making more land arable, since, for instance, less water is needed, as we pointed out, the crops can be drought resistant, we can grow it on much harsher environments, and therefore overall jobs available is increased, and essentially we are presenting solution, as opposed to them which only take the bad part, the possible bad ramification, and make them reality. So that's the first thing I'd like to point out, is the hunger. Secondly, we need to understand that the people also suffer from malnutrition, which was never tackled by the side proposition. Which is a certain effect, is, for instance, of the gold rice, is that it gives more vitamin A. Vitamin A deficiency is a severe problem in rice-based societies. What we need to understand is only by giving them different food helps them, because the people won't get blind, as we pointed out, for instance, due to the vitamin A deficiency. And therefore, the people will have, for instance, they will be able to work more, etc. So the entire point of hunger and the entire point of malnutrition apparently falls to our side. Secondly, about the point of more pesticides. What have they been claiming? There is going to be use of more pesticides because we use some. Okay, there is Roundup product of Monsanto, we agree. There is. But on the other hand, we've provided evidence by the International Service for Agriculture for the acquisition of biotech applications that has shown that there is actually less pesticide needed in the end. And therefore, we can see once again that this point is essentially false, because in the end, we use indeed some pesticides and we use some fertilizers. However, we use less of them, and that is the point we have been trying to prove all along. And we can clearly see that this point once again falls to our side, since there was no empirical evidence provided by the side negative. So let me move to the third point, which was about environmental impact, which was fundamentally left out by the side negative. We need to understand that in case for if you want to have a sustainable future, if you want to have a sustainable future with people having enough water to drink, with not so severe climate changes, we need to understand that we need to deal with that now. And GMOs are certainly a way how to tackle this problem, since they require less water and since they are more eco-friendly in the end. And generally we can see that this point was untackled, and we believe that those benefits for mankind are indeed essential for our entire future. Lastly, let me deal with the point of economic benefit. What they have fundamentally failed to address was the point that the people in Africa are currently self-employed, and self-employed people are not going to fire themselves. And we need to understand that the higher yields will only improve their economic prospects in the future, because they will be able to then perhaps sell the additional food they have. Moreover, we need to understand that the higher yields will generally improve their higher yields. So they're not going to lose the jobs, because they don't have a person to lose the job to, because they are only self-employed. So even the small amount of land they currently have will have higher yields, and they will be able to draw the good things from the GMO. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope I've shown you that this indeed is going to be a good day.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to show you that, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, even though this might be a good day for the affirmative party, I believe that this is going to be good for them, even though they will lose the debate. So, ladies and gentlemen, and let me show you why this is going to happen. So, we were able to refute all the basic statements that the entire argumentation of the affirmative line was based on. And these assumptions led to what was divided to those three arguments we have heard about today. And that's what, that was the basis of this argumentation. And we were able to disprove it, and therefore the argumentation of the affirmative party fails and falls as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, we were able to show you that in the first argument, it was about solving hunger and improving health. Firstly, we showed you that actually it is unsustainable. And as our first speaker said, and after him, the second one, there is this much of food. There's this much of people that are hungry. And this, ladies and gentlemen, if you raise the food, actually the more hungry people there are going to be in the long term. And since there is no link between these two piles, there is going to be still so much hunger and so much health, which is not good for the mankind. Because, and I'm going to explain why there's no link. Simply because these people have no money to afford this food. And therefore, there is more and more hungry people. So even though there's more food, there's more hungry people. So therefore, this is why, actually, even though we would introduce genetically modified organisms in the third world, it will not solve neither hunger nor their health. Ladies and gentlemen, at the point of the health, we showed you that actually there is high danger of happening what happened with DDT back in the 1970s. The affirmative side told us that actually there are some health tests that will not allow for unhealthy GMOs to get to the market. But we showed you that actually these are not the long-term tests, and these cannot predict what can happen. And we showed you that actually this this danger is so bad that this is not a risk to be taken by the mankind. In the second argument, that was mainly refuted as a part also of the refutation of the first argument, and I'll show you how. It was the reduction of the footprint. We were able to show you that actually the more protection of these crops, genetically modified organisms, also leads to higher resistance of weeds and pests. This is how super weeds and super pests can come to existence, and after that, that means that actually even more and more pesticides and herbicides are needed, which causes much huger footprint in the ecosystem, which is really not good, even neither for the mankind. Also, there were those points of deforestation and saving water, and they were not really well explained. We don't consider them as major arguments, since we were able to prove that actually the footprint comes from other sources. Also, in the third argument, economic benefits, we showed you that actually people, by introduction of GMOs, lose their jobs. We were told that actually these people are not selling it. Ladies and gentlemen, at first, some of them are, and those who are will lose their jobs, as we showed you. And second, those who produce food for themselves, actually, we showed you that actually because of unequal distribution of land in Africa, for example, only few people are actually able to produce food for themselves. And that is why the economic benefit does not apply for the entire society, because of this uneven distribution of land. Ladies and gentlemen, by proving these major arguments of the affirmative line, we have shown you that actually we definitely should not support the development of use of GMOs, even though it's a nice day out there. Thank you very much.